Hi there, this is Jamie and welcome back to our next set of videos for the Business Analytics course, Research Methods, that's part of Humboldt State University's MBA in Strategic Sustainability. We're working now on Chapter 3, which deals with data visualization, and in particular, we're going to be looking at making a few different types of charts. In this chart, we're going to take a look at what are called scatter charts. This is where we're looking at the relationship between two variables to see if those variables, if there's a pattern in the relationship between the variables. And in this case, the data that we have is showing how the number of commercials that were shown impacts the sales volume. And from a marketing perspective, we might be interested to know whether or not showing more commercials will result in higher sales. And so we're going to look at the sales as a function of the number of commercials because we think that more commercials might result in higher sales. So to make a chart, in this case, when the two columns of data are right next to each other, we can highlight both columns of data. And what we want is the number of commercials to show up on the x-axis and the volume of sales to show up on the y-axis. To insert this chart, we come up here under the Insert tab, and then a number of our types of charts can be found right here. We're going to choose this one, which is called the scatter chart. And when we're making scatter plots, we typically don't want lines to be involved. So I'm going to click on that scatter plot, and this chart is going to come up. We can see right away that it appears that for each number of commercials, we've got two observations. So we showed one commercial on 2 days, which I can visually eyeball by looking at the data. So on day 3 and on day 6, we showed one commercial each. And both of those days had sales of roughly 40 units. And if I highlight those buttons, if I put my mouse over them, not highlighting, but just hover over, I can actually see that on that upper dot corresponding to the one commercial, that was 41 sales. And on the lower dot, there were 38 sales. So I want to begin by formatting this chart. Chart formatting for me is extremely important. You should be able to look at the chart and not have to go back to your data or not have to go to written text. It should be obvious what's in the chart by looking at the information on the chart. And here we see sales volume, but that doesn't tell us which is sales volume, and it doesn't tell us what the other axis is. So we need to make sure our title reflects what's on the chart, and we need to label both axes so that the reader knows what's going on. So I'm going to call this sales volume at different advertising levels. And then under my chart design, if you're on a PC, it'll be over here, but I'm going to add the element of my axis titles, both the primary horizontal axis and the primary vertical axis, and I'm going to label both of these. Sales volume, and this is number of commercials per week. Now I've got a sense of what's going on here. One nice thing about a scatter plot is that we can use them to visually identify if we think the relationship between the two variables is related, right? And here it does seem that they are. The more commercials we show, the higher our sales seem to be. And you could almost envision plotting a line through this data, right? At higher levels of commercials, we have more sales. That would be an example of what's called a linear relationship. This relationship, we might be able to model it or to create a simplified visualization of it by sticking a line through it. And if we did that, that would allow us to project how many sales we would make if we showed 6 commercials per week. So to get here, what we need to do is insert a trend line. And Excel can do that for us. If you click on any one of the dots, some of them, but not all of them, will highlight, and then right-click. So a single click, and then a right-click. And you'll choose this option that says Add Trend Line. When you click on the Add Trendline button, this trendline box will come up. It'll be similar if you're on a PC. And did you see how it placed that line in the data? So that line is the line that best fits the data. And what I mean by best fit is it gets it as close as possible to each of the dots. If I want to project what what sales we would have if we had 6 commercials per week, I need to know the parameters of that line, right? What's the equation of that line? So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come down here and I'm going to say display the equation on the chart. And this equation pops up. I'm just going to move it out of the way so I can read it. Please move yours out of the way too so that I can read it, that you can read it, anyone can read it. And now we can see that if this is a line, our equation for this line, our y value, which here corresponds to sales volume, is equal to 4.95 times x, where x is the number of commercials per week, plus 36.15. You might recognize this as the formula for a line, right? Y equals mx plus b. I'm going to make this little table down here, and I'm going to call it sales projections. We're basically using this line of best fit put through existing data to forecast what sales would be if we were to show 6 commercials. So I'm going to add a few columns or a few cells, number of commercials, and then here I'm going to write in the slope and the intercept, and then I'm going to put projected sales. So we're projecting how many we would sell, how many units we'd sell if we showed 6 commercials. And now here we need to enter what is the slope and the intercept for the line. I'll show you formulas for that later, but in the short term, we can get that information here. So if our formula is y equals mx plus b, m, which is the slope of the line, is 4.95. And b, which is the intercept, is 36.15. So if we want to know what our sales projections would be next week, let's say, if we wanted to run 6 commercials, our sales would be equal to, by entering the equal sign, italic cell that I'm entering a formula, is going to be equal to m, which is the slope, multiplied by x, which in this case is the number of commercials, because that's what's on the x-axis in this model, plus the intercept of that line. So projected sales would be 65.85 units, a number that, if you take a look at where that line would end up, makes perfect sense. I'm going to enter a formula here called formula text, except I have to spell it right if it's going to work. And formula text returns the formula of a cell. So now you can look in that column G and see what formula I put in. So in this video, we made the scatter plot, and then we also projected sales forward using the equation for the line that best fit the data. So happy calculating, and like always, let me know if you have any questions, and I will be talking to you soon.